Now, to the news of the night internationally and the Democratic debate, which wrapped up a few hours ago in Charleston, in Carolina. Now, where Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders spent the fourth Democratic debate swinging at each other on gun control, healthcare, Wall Street regulation, and their ability to defeat a Republican in the general elections. With the first contest drawing near and the race tightening, the battle lines were firmly drawn as Clinton, Sanders, and O'Malley, yes, there's a third guy, met on stage. The three candidates have sparred in past debates, but with the temperature rising, last night's debate took a sharp turn, as a Democratic debate can. Sanders slammed Clinton on a line of debate he has until now not used as much, namely Wall Street, and the bulk of money in speaking fees she gets from various institutions there. Clinton fired back, criticizing Sanders of calling the President Obama, weak and disappointing. Above all, though, the stakes last night run high because the debate is the last one before the Iowa caucuses, where Sanders and Clinton are locked in a near-even battle to win the first contest in the Democratic primary, and the debate being their last chance to reach a national audience before voting begins. It was exciting, not as exciting, some will say, as the Republican debates, but enough for us to gather here. So in studio with me, spokesperson of the American Democratic Party in Israel, Sheldon Shore, good morning to you. Of course, we cannot do this without our, U.S. elections analyst and aficionado, Ami Kaufman, host also of The Road to the White House. Good morning to you. And I'm extremely happy to have another woman in the studio, finally, and political analyst Dr. Dalia Scheindling in with us in studio. Before anything else, let's take a look at the debate that was and ended just a few hours ago in Charleston. Here we go.
Just 2 weeks before the voting starts in Iowa, the three Democratic presidential candidates sparred on stage in South Carolina, with former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley giving his all to stay alive.
Join me in putting forward a plan to move us to a 100% clean electric energy grid by 2050.
Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are now in a tight battle to win the first Democratic contest. And on this night, the first issue tackled, gun control.
He has voted with the NRA, with the gun lobby, numerous times. He voted against the Brady bill 5 times.
Secretary Clinton knows that what she says is very disingenuous. I have a D- voting record from the NRA.
The exchanges heated at times, discussing the economy and health care.
I want us to defend and build on the Affordable Care Act and improve it.
My proposal: provide health care to all people, get private insurance out of health insurance.
But the two also remaining civil, finding common ground on other issues.
There needs to be a concerted effort to address the systemic racism in our criminal justice system.
Whenever anybody in this country is killed while in police custody, this should automatically trigger a U.S. Attorney General's investigation.
Joining us now via Skype from Jerusalem is General Counsel for Republicans Overseas in Israel, Abraham Katzman. Mr. Katzman, good morning to you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Did you have a chance to watch the debate, the Democratic debate last night?
Yes, I did. I was up early.
Okay, your thoughts before we go to the actual members of the party?
I'd say a couple of things. For one thing, I thought Hillary Clinton was making almost, I would say she was pandering even to the African-American community. You have to look at this from a domestic political standpoint, and I think she is trying to shore up her support among the Black Americans who seem to support her more than they do Senator Sanders. But anyway, we'll see what happens there. I think she feels that she's in trouble in terms of the recent polling, and she's looking to shore up her support. Besides that, look, they both ran as far as they could to the left. They both ignored overwhelmingly the major foreign policy and national security issues. They didn't touch on immigration, and they didn't touch on the real domestic problems like the $19 trillion in national debt, or the record number of people on food stamps, or the lowest percentage of people in the workforce since the Carter administration. So I think there's an awful lot that they didn't do, but I understand what they were doing in terms of each trying to shore up their Democratic support.
Now, I want to thank you for that input, because Sheldon Shore with us in studio on the same issue when you were looking at your debate at the end of the day, let's face it. Is Hillary Clinton, as we just heard from Mr. Katzman, is she in trouble?
She's not in trouble. She's leading over Sanders 2-1. Okay, and head-to-head against Trump, Sanders is leading Trump 54-39. Clinton is leading Trump 51-31. So, no, I don't think she's in trouble. She's not pandering. She is a person who has the support of minorities more than Sanders. But I think the focus of the debate here was really about Sanders. He was really the issue. It was all about what Sanders' positions was and the reaction to. And Clinton was reacting to Sanders' position. It's something that generated a lot of interest in Sanders, by the way. There was they did a Google poll where they found that in every state of the United States, more people polled questions about Sanders than the other two people. So in other words, this raised issues about Sanders. And it's not surprising because in this election, the electorate is against Washington, against political politics as usual. This is one of the reasons why people like Carson and Trump are getting so much play. And Sanders gets a lot of play also because he's also against the establishment. He says we have to do wholesale changes. Hillary Clinton positions herself as the successor to Obama. She embraces Obama and his policies, saying we have to improve on them, we have to build on them. And Sanders says, let's do wholesale changes.
And I'm wondering, though, when we're discussing the polls, and I'm glad we have Dr. Dalia Schandling with us in studio on that, because a poll that came out just before the debate, and this is an NBC Wall Street Journal poll, so it puts Clinton at 59%. I don't know if we can see these numbers coming up on the screen right now. Again, an NBC Wall Street Journal poll puts Clinton at 59%, Sanders at 34%, and O'Malley at 2%. And when we're looking at these polls, Dalia, though, coming into this debate already, I'm going to ask the same question. Is Clinton in trouble? Because everything I'm reading in the last 24, or I would say in the last week, positions are not what puts her in some kind of trouble at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, the polls do show that she had what I would call probably a tough week or two. Remember, there's going to be ups or downs in any campaign, and I will say that, the average of all the polls for the last couple of weeks shows her a little bit down, both in terms of the primary, where Sanders actually, risen quite a bit in Iowa and New Hampshire, but she still leads pretty comfortably over Sanders, by, as you point, in some polls 2-1. In the average of the polls, she's got about 51 to him 38. But also in the national races, what we see is some slippage, because if in the past she had a pretty comfortable lead over all the other candidates except for Rubio, where he was leading by about 1.5%. This week we see on the average of all the polls, she's actually slipping somewhat. She's losing to Rubio now by about 3%, and she's even got Cruz even has an advantage over her by very small percentage points, and she's only leading over Trump, which is still stable enough at several percentage points, but it's also a slippage from her advantage over Trump from a few weeks back. So there's some tension there, and clearly she's got to make an assertive stance for that reason. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't go so far as to say she's in trouble, because these are natural ups and downs, and it's probably actually a good thing, because it sort of perks the race up and makes voters more interested, and certainly makes Democrats more tuned in when there's a little bit of tension like that.
When there's a little bit of tension like that, and when we're looking at reactions, though, if we're looking at the Clinton campaign, as all of this is happening, actually, Sheldon, I'm gonna ask you this: we did not see that much of a mention about Iran. We did not see that much of a mention of foreign policy in these speeches.
Well, the beginning of the debate, they were speaking mostly about gun control, about health care, and about Wall Street. This is one of the Sanders thing, is that Wall Street has caused the problems. We have to go and fight Wall Street. But there was very strong questions about it. In fact, Sanders said at the end that his first priority as far as Iraq is concerned would be to get rid of ISIS. Second is to get rid of Assad in that area. That's what he said. First is ISIS, but there was discussion about the foreign security. But look, the ISIS, I don't think, is a real serious issue, because nobody in America is in favor of ISIS. This is not a divisive. This is not a divisive issue.
You're not going to find people that are campaigning. Do not get rid of ISIS.
They're not going to be saying, "Let's go for ISIS." That's not. That's not the big issue here. That's a scare tactic that Republicans like to use. We're being overrun by immigrants. We got to keep the Muslims out. We got to keep the Mexicans out. That's a scare tactic.
Republicans. It's a tactic that's working
with the Democrats
with a lot
have to play to that.
Of the American public, sadly, in many ways, wouldn't we say? I'm looking for confirmation from Dahlia.
No, I mean, scare tactics will always work on some level. But what I do think is interesting is that this debate, by contrast to the Republican debates, they talked about an issue that should be front and center in American politics, which is gun control. And as we know, it's not only a Democratic issue, because we know there's bipartisan support in polling. 3/4 of the American voters in a November poll support the executive action that hadn't happened. But I mean, these are issues that actually all Americans care about, as well they should, because they're dying at enormous numbers. And finally, this issue was front and center, as we haven't seen so much in the Republican debates. So, I mean, there are scare tactics that will always be part of it, and then there are issues that really do affect, every American, which,
But I'd just like to say one thing about the tenor of the debate. The Republican debate contained a lot of ad hominem remarks, where one person characterized the other person as being either weak or stupid. I'm speaking, and we know exactly which candidate is the one who said that. But here there were differences, sharp differences between Hillary Clinton and Sanders, but they were talking about the issues. There was mutual respect, and they had some differences about the issues, but it was an interesting and a vigorous debate for that reason, because they were talking about real things and not just who's a weaker person.
And I know we don't have him here in studio. I will not channel Mark Zell. Ami Kaufman, really quickly to you, though, when it comes to reaction, has anybody reacted at this point?
Well, unfortunately, the people that we most expected to react, like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, frontrunners, I haven't seen any, social media reactions. But I can show you some other stuff that other candidates said, like Jeb Bush, typically boring. Most passionate moments of Dem debate are always about who will ban more guns and who will give the government more control over your health care. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, take a little jab. Let's see his. 2 hours of this. Imagine 4 years. Rand Paul, who managed to take a jab not only at the Democrats, but also at Chris Christie in the same tweet. Hillary Clinton is giving Barack Obama a big hug right now in the Dem debate. Chris Christie is getting jealous. This is important, actually. Obama's former advisor, David Axelrod, said that Senator Sanders, when he talked about Hillary Clinton, said that he appreciated the way he was speaking about the whole former marital affairs. And lastly, Brian Stelter, who is a media analyst on CNN, very important what he says. I like this tweet. This is very interesting. In October, the CNN ratings were 15.3 million. In November, CBS 8.5, ABC 7.8, constantly going down. Obviously, he's saying tomorrow is probably going to be even lower. And you know what? That's a good point, because the Democrats are putting their debates at the strangest hours and days on the weekend when nobody is watching them.
When Downton Abbey is on.
Well, you know what? Maybe, So it's a good point, and I think we might see lower numbers since this apparently wasn't a very exciting debate.
Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree, no matter what your political affiliation is, that you cannot beat the Republican show when it comes to debates, okay? I mean, we can agree on that. It's a show. I said that here, but I want to thank everybody for joining me this morning on the American elections that we will be following very closely to November as we move along.